Welcome to another episode of Breakaway from the Rat Race. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Rafael Cortez. Rafael is a real estate coach, an organizational psychologist. He owns a traditional brokerage and wholesaling and flipping business. Other companies include verticals in education, software, and of course his organizational psychology practice, where he focused on business coaching and consulting. He has invested profitably in real estate since 2009, doing everything from fix and flip, creative financing, wholesaling, which yielded him millions of dollars in profits to date. Rafael is now passionate about using his investment knowledge and entrepreneurial experience and background in business to help other entrepreneurs succeed through his wholesaling coaching programs. He teaches his students how to find, negotiate, close real estate deals while building a successful and sustainable business in the process. Rafael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting profile. I think I don't have too many people on the show that have organizational psychology in their background. What interested you in organizational psychology?
Well, I launched my first business when I was 21 years old, and I've always had I just been interested in human psychology, right? Like growing up, I was a kid that would watch those psychological thrillers and that sort of thing. It's just human nature has always been intriguing to me. Yeah. And I launched my first business when I was 21. And after I had that for a few years, I went back to school and I got a bachelor's in business administration. Then I jumped into a master's program, a psychology master's program. In the interim, I found out that they had this thing called organizational psychology, where you connect business and people, right? So that to me was just, kind of like a lifelong curiosity that I had for psychology and an interest into what I was doing in terms of business development and building the companies and that sort of thing. So yeah, it just kind of I had a really cool conversation with one of my counselors, and they put that on the table. I was like, wow, okay, cool, serendipitous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is very. The first time I heard that, I was on a plane. I was going, I think, San Francisco or something like that, or some other places. And then this person was a organizational psychologist, and I said, "Oh my God, yeah, this is very interesting." I'm also a big fan of psychology and neuroscience. I used to read when I was in high school. I read all the books I could get my hands on psychology and psychiatry and neuroscience and stuff like that. And then I said, yeah, I mean, I'm always intrigued how you can get all these individually smart people and you put them in a conference room and the dumbest ideas succeed. I mean, I don't get it. How does that happen?
And it's a very valid question, right? Like, it's one of the things that I see quite a bit, especially with people who are just getting started as entrepreneurs or people launching their wholesale business and the real estate space and that sort of thing. We have the tendency, the smarter we think we are, the more we analyze things, right? So we have the tendency to get in our own way, when really, if you look at the grand scheme of things, a lot of times the simplest approach is the one that yields the best results.
Well, that's true. Totally. And I think especially when you get started too, you have a tendency. So I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I mean, you're helping a lot of people that they want to get into real estate. So they're new. A lot of them are new at being an entrepreneur, period, and having a business. They've been working full time. Tell us a little bit more about kind of like how the shift is between working full time and starting your own business, even if it's in real estate, and then and kind of like how can you help people to do that transition more easily or more effectively?
So one of the biggest things that happens as people start going through or even considering, right, taking that leap from a regular 9-to-5 and into betting on themselves, is it's a lot of self-doubt. So the biggest battle is really going to be on the mindset side of things. The pragmatic, the technical stuff it's usually laid out, right? You can go to a coach, you can go to somebody who's already been there, and then to walk you through the process, and And I mean, that's important, but it's not the bulk of it. The one thing that I see stopping people on their tracks is really the mindset, like just that internal conversation that always happens, right, in the morning. When you wake up and you start asking yourself, should I be lead generating today? Yesterday I made calls and I got no results. I mean, I probably suck at this thing. My skills are not there. I'm not built for this. And then that, I mean, all that stuff starts piling up, right? And it creates this big weight when it comes to mindset, when it comes to the tenacity that we need to have just as entrepreneurs in general, especially if you're jumping into a competitive space like real estate, right? So yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is really overcoming ourselves, getting out of our own way, just like we were talking about earlier. When we're tapping into something new, there can be a degree of lack of clarity, and that comes with with actually taking action, right, and getting in there, but contemplating the theory behind the process, or what it can do as a as an entrepreneur, or as I'm developing the business plan. Then you have people that develop a business plan for 3 years, right, and then there's no tangible action behind it. It's a creative avoidance. That's really what's happening a lot of times.
So. And I really, mindset is definitely critical. I think this is, there's so many people that, they're not doing it. There's a significant barrier that they, in their mind, that they won't do it. And for me, like one of the things that I talk about in my book is really create an inventory, a list of all these things, these self-doubt, these limiting beliefs that you have. And then one of the things that you realize when you do this is you realize that a lot of these things, they come from your parents, they come from your teachers. And then you realize like, oh yeah, so this is coming from, I'm not good at this, or I'm not good at business or whatever. Or this comes from somebody that has never done any business. So why am I giving any credibility to this voice in my head that I know is coming from this person that they never had any business? So it's just like, okay, well, let's just forget about that. This is like, if I'm not, let me replace that thing, that thought, that voice with something that's more creative.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The interesting thing about that is, when we're little, right, when we're kids, the critical thinking process is not necessarily there. The challenging of things. So we can have a degree of logic when we're 5, 6, 7, 8, right?
Yeah.
But the challenging of the ideas, I mean, it's really not there. Like it's not. We process enough, right? But we not enough to challenge something. So a lot of the conversations that happen, or stuff that we hear, when we're growing up between 7 and 12 years old, it's, I mean, those are like literally like programs that are just being set up in our psyche, right, as we grow up. So if we heard that, for example, business was tough, that rich people were mean, or something like that, that's stuff that we really take to
they were crooks. That's what
exactly.
That's what my parents told me.
Yeah, I mean, my story was similar, right? And then so you grow up with this stigma, and then we build habits, expectations, and a lot of different things on top of that foundation, right? So after we get exposed to the real world, and then we see that things are different, we try to change, right? But it takes sometimes it can take a minute to get to that under layer that's really at the source of things. So yeah, it's one of the biggest things, right? When people are tapping into entrepreneurship, the attrition level is high, meaning that a lot of people just get out within the first year because of that internal conversation, that internal battle. And it's conditioning in reality. Like everybody can be an entrepreneur, I feel, if you have the tenacity and the devotion to it. Right. It's I think one of the things that we have to consider is what field are we tapping into, and is that something that aligns with ourselves, with our our passions, or tastes, or truth, right, per se. But everybody can come in and actually succeed, right? Like the blueprints are out there, they're left and right. I mean, there's so many coaches out there on every single aspect of things, right? Cut the learning curve somehow, some way, and then the rest of it is going to be really that internal conversation. It's going to be getting over that mindset hump that can really put you out of business real quick.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think the coaching is a big one. A lot of people are buying into these programs, these training programs and stuff like that. And often it's not enough. And I think it's just more like a distraction. And because now I don't know anything about kind of like how to invest in real estate. So now I'm going to get this program that's going to tell me how to wholesale, how to do commercial, how to do self-storage, how to do, commercial, how to do medical building, nursing home, and stuff like that. And I say, oh yeah, well, what am I going to do now? It's just like my mind's going to blow up. And then, but if you have a coach, then you could really cut down the noise and help you focus on what's really important and what you should be, what your strategy should be. I said, no, you shouldn't be doing commercial buildings because you don't have enough money. You don't have the expertise to do that. And, you need to focus on something else. You need to focus on something a little less sexy. Maybe you need to do wholesaling because you don't have enough capital, right? Start building that capital and then help with a coach to build that strategy.
Yeah, I think the strategy definitely has to match the vision and I mean, everything, like, for example, I love wholesaling because it just sets you up in first position. When you're in front of the deal, you can choose what to do with it, right? My focus right now, for example, well, when I got started, all I wanted to do was wholesale. And then I started looking at flips. And then I started, oh, you know what, I'm going to, do creative financing on this thing and then just keep it in my own portfolio. And I really got sidetracked. And what happened was that I lost, I let go of the gas on the lead generation side. So my wholesaling business altogether just started, kind of, having a deficiency there. You know what I mean? So it's easy to get, the shiny object syndrome. But, when I mentioned, for example, it's picking something that aligns to what you want to do right now. Okay, what are you focused on? If for the next year, all you want to do is capitalize. Cool. Pick a strategy and, roll with that, right? Tap into it, go deep on it. And you're going to have results. It's only a matter of time when you have guidance in place. It's not a matter of if this thing's going to work. It's okay. It's when. Does it work in the next 90 days, in the next 6 months? And staying honed in on that, I think it's a big key, right? It's one thing that I see also too, for example, is a lot, somebody has $30,000, right? Say that I have a new student that came in, they have $30,000 and they're like, okay, well, what do I do? Who do I hire? Who do I bring on? A lot of times delegation is happening way sooner than it needs to be. I don't think that we need to become experts at every single area of our business, but I think that my school of thought on that is that we need to know enough so that we're dangerous. We know how the business works. We know how the business is processed. You do have to go in and then do the trench work. That has to happen inevitably, right? Otherwise, you're not, for example, if you're coming in from the corporate space and you're not used to get, the bumps and bruises that you get as an entrepreneur, it's, when you get a real challenge, it can really break you, right? So it goes back to that character building. It goes back to that entrepreneur tenacity and really the mindset. I think jumping into a space and digging the trench as you're going through the process, it's a very important thing, not just for the business itself, but for us as individuals, right? And speaking to the growth side of things. So
yeah, I totally agree. And I think even if you do a wholesaling business, I mean, you have a blueprint for doing a wholesaling business, everybody's doing it a little bit differently. Everybody's doing the way they approach things, the properties that they want, the property owners they want to talk to, how they want to approach them, and all that kind of stuff, and the deals they want to do. So you can't take a blueprint and say, or a script and say, oh yeah, there we go. I'm going to send it to a VA in the Philippines, and then or 10 VAs in the Philippines, and I'm just going to sit and wait for the deals to show
and
up.
Expect the money to rain. Yeah.
Exactly right. So I think really going in there and really having to go in the trenches and do something so that you can experience exactly what's going on and how your business at the detailed level is working. I think one of the things too that you mentioned earlier was the alignment, like being aligned with your goal, and then being able to go deep. And I think this is where people are afraid of doing there. They go in, they start in whatever it is, flipping, wholesaling, and then they experience some challenges, some difficult time, and then they say, well, this is too complicated. This is too hard. Maybe I should go. These guys are doing this. they're doing Burr or they're doing this, and it's a lot. It looks a lot easier. Well, people look at me and they say, "Oh, this turnkey business is really easy. I'm going to do that." And it's like, I'm going to do he can do it like 200 houses a year, so that's going to be, it has to be easy.
It's gotta be easy.
But yeah, I think it's people don't go deep, or they find something and it's making some money, but it's not making enough money. Go deep, go into detail, make it more profitable, and really tweak your business, tweak that engine. If you find an opportunity, something that, or the type of deals that, or a business or a strategy that makes money, this is great. Stick to it, go deep, and go as deep as you can to make it as profitable as you can. And then after that, then if you want to switch to something else, then.
Well, I think, I would invite people to think about just bolting on stuff, right? If you have something that's working as a backbone, as a strategy, right? For example, like I've had the opportunity to tap into commercial, tap into fix and flip, tap into a whole bunch of other stuff, but my wholesale business, I went heavy on that. You know what I mean? It took me intentionally the time to turn it into an operation, to an actual business that's operating even when I'm not there. And so that thing it's standing. It's everything else I do, it's a bolt on to that, to that infrastructure. But I think it's important to pick, one thing that, okay, cool, this is going to be my backbone business, and then I can do stuff that, but never stop that from running. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. If you find something that's working, that's running, you operationalize it. Then this is, you talked about delegation happening too soon.
Yeah.
It's at that point that you start operationalizing it, and then you start building like processes and hiring people to take over some of the tasks that are, where you don't need to be there anymore. And then you can focus on something else. And then you invest, you go and explore other things. But people are not spending enough time. They're not going deep enough really to experience that and have like a solid core business, and to allow them to explore something else.
Well, I think there's also a lot of distractions, right? Like we don't have, like now we have the distractions that we didn't have. Heck, I can think, 15 years ago, it's the social media stuff. There was, Facebook and a couple other ones out there, but it wasn't as dense as it is now, right? So I think that that comparison, it just inevitably pops up, right? Like you're doing something and you feel like you're like, okay, cool, I gained a step today in my business. And then you jump on social media and look at Instagram and then see this other dude that just crushed it on $100,000 deal, or, whatever. And then we feel less than, like that's
exactly.
It's almost like a default response, right? And that can steal that sense of joy and that sense of wins that we need to start accumulating, right? To build up that confidence, build up that tenacity. We are gonna get hit as entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You're gonna get hit. You're gonna get bumps and bruises. And the big thing is to understand, right? Like those things make us better. They make us, they help us take better decisions down the road. One approach that I love implementing when I'm tapping into a new venture or doing a new project or something is to reverse engineer. So if somebody is breaking into real estate or trying to do their first flip and whatnot, think of the whole thing from the end. So okay, cool, I got paid. What's the step that happened right before that, right? And then okay, cool, before I got paid, I closed a title. Okay, what's the step that happened before I closed a title? We had to do the settlement statement. I remember that document, and then we had to sign, and then start documenting the whole thing in backwards, right? So you end up with this thinking from the end process. You end up with somewhat of a path that you can follow forward. I've used that in multiple different things. I've launched different things in different industries, and just that thought process alone helps quite a bit in terms of visualizing. Okay, cool, this is probably what it's going to take to build this thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think that's if you look at also like books from Tim Ferriss, like 4-Hour Work Week and stuff like that, it was kind of similar to that too. Like he was just like, okay, well, I want to be like a professional tango dancer for this competition. So, well, I don't need to learn all the different styles. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. And it's like, I need to specifically, what do I need to do to get from this to this.
Yeah.
And really everything else is irrelevant after that.
Yeah.
So once you really identify clearly what the end goal is for a particular transaction or your strategy, then yeah, working backward is it's definitely very efficient, and then it helps you cut the noise. And so yeah, that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
People don't realize also the level of challenges. So and I think as soon as you feel challenges, people always think it's easy, and then they go into the business and then they say, oh well, this is not as easy as what I read, and
Yeah.
and then automatically what happens is that you have self-doubt. Oh, maybe I made a mistake doing this. And so how do you correct that?
In terms of self-doubt, I think it really, self-doubt comes down to clarity. It's most of the time what I find is people don't have doubt on their capacity to do things. Just the clarity of the pathway is not there. They're like, okay, cool, I want to launch. I don't know. I want to, go into real. For example, I see this all the time in wholesale, right? You have people that have been, going to YouTube University, and then, they understand the components of wholesaling, but not necessarily the order of things, right? And they feel like they don't know it. They feel like they don't have the skill set for it. But in reality, it's a matter of the order of things, right? It's clarity, okay, on the path, on the set of actions that need to be taken, not a skill set thing. And I think it's easy to confuse that. Okay, when you have, okay, I know I need to do this, or I want to, create this thing, but self-doubt creeps in, and then you start thinking that you don't have a skill set. It's a lot of times it really comes down to clarity. Okay, what's the next step? I don't have to think about the whole thing. I don't have to visualize the whole thing. It may be daunting to think that I want to build a $2 million business. Like, I have no idea how that is done. But if you reverse engineer it and you break it down, okay, what's the step that I got to take today? And then tomorrow, figure that out again. And then the day after, and then just micro steps get you, the whole way. But that really, it's easy to wrap your head around the idea of what do I have to do today, especially when it comes to self-doubt, as opposed to trying to eat this big elephant in terms of, man, do I have what it takes to build a $2 million company? Yeah.
So that's good. So it sounds like you need to have somewhat of a daily practice, something that you do every day to keep you focused. And so do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the 5 a.m. Approach, the morning routine and rituals. It's and you don't have to do it at 5 a.m. and sometimes realistically I'll wake up at 6:30.
That's because you were a firefighter probably, and then you say,
yeah, exactly. It's crazy when you're in the fire department. You close your eyes and you just kind of turn off, and then codes go on and you turn back on. It's kind of weird, but yeah, you do it at 3 a.m, 2 a.m, 11. Didn't matter. But anyways, so having something that just centers you in the morning. I mean, the world is super busy, right? And our minds are meant to process information, not retain. So from the moment that we wake up, if we're not aware, we don't have that we don't make that choice of understanding what's going through our heads, right? We're going to be an automatic. 95% of the stuff that we're doing on a regular basis happen as subconscious triggers. It's subconscious movement. When you jump into your car and you start driving, you're not thinking about every single turn. It's your subconscious taking over, right? It's like autopilot. It's the same thing, when you walk to the kitchen, you go to the stuff that when we think normally we're not thinking, we're responding just from pre-wiring, right?
Yeah.
So in the morning for me, one of the biggest things is really to go in. I journal a lot. I love journaling, so I'll take some time to meditate, and then just time in silence to sit there with my thoughts. Sometimes I have no idea what I want to get to, but the intention is there. The intention is to clear my thoughts and then get a grip on my thought process for the day, right? And not that I can control it, right? It's like it goes away all the time. But if you begin with that intention and then you journal, and you get a lot of epiphanies, you get a lot of like for example, one of the questions that I ask myself is, how am I showing up today? And that's in every single area, right? To my business, to my employees, with my family, with my kids, with my friends, personally, how am I tackling the self, my mindset, my emotions, my body, and my soul, right? How am I showing up in those areas? And again, sometimes you have like that mental block, but when you start just putting things on paper, it like you just kind of, your brain just unloads. And so that's huge for me. It's really one of the things that keeps me sane, and in a constant state of reflection.
So this is very good. And for me, like I do the same thing. Like I don't wake up at 5 a.m, but I wake up pretty early, 6, 7, and then I do yoga, and I do my kind of like meditation when I do my yoga, and it really helps me kind of like start the day right, and then really transition slowly into my the rest of my day. But I think this is very important to do something like that. And people always, that's part of the problem, I think, with social media, is that you don't have a second of silence. You don't have a second to think on your own. You're constantly being bombarded with useless pieces of information. And it's important to turn that off, even if it's just like 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, and enjoy silence and enjoy a white piece of paper with a pen in front of you. And then what are you thinking? And that's just part of the thing with the journaling. I don't do a journal personally, but I think I could see the appeal for that.
I started writing things down, years ago, and it's one of those habits that I picked up, and just, it hasn't gone anywhere. It just, it helps me. So in order to write something, the way that I see it, here's my notebook. But the way that I see it, right, in order to write something down, you have to clarify. So, and the process of clarity to write something down is really the value, right? After it goes in my notebook, realistically, maybe I'll go back and take one more look at it, but I had to clarify it in my mind to put it into paper, and then turn it into its physical form, and that process in itself, I think it's where most of the value comes. Do you remember that when, like, I remember when I was in elementary, and we had the textbooks, and junior high had the textbooks, and then every chapter had this critical thinking box. So I don't know if you ever saw those on textbooks, but on mine, so you would have the chapter, and then at the end of the chapter, you would have one page with a bunch of questions, kind of like a review, and then it would have this little corner, or this box on the corner that said critical thinking, and then it would ask you, like, what would you think if whatever, or what would you do if whatever. So it was just another question, right? But the heading was critical thinking. I didn't understand that until, like, I don't know, like, realistically, maybe 8 years ago. It was like critical thinking, so thinking for ourselves, right? I think that's one thing that's really, it's almost like a lost art, just because of all the noise that's around us, right? So making the intention of critical thinking is important, right? Are you really thinking about for yourself when it comes to your career, when it comes to the stuff that you enjoy? One scary question is that I ask all the time is, what do you enjoy? And people will always link it to, okay, I like going to the parks because my kids enjoy the park. Well, I like this, but there's always a link to something else, but not to the self. And that takes critical thinking. That takes asking yourself, what do I stand as an individual, and how do the actions that I'm taking on a daily basis and my environment connect to that? So I think it's part of that whole growth process.
And this is important, especially in real estate, because in real estate you have so many different types of contacts with different individuals. Your contractors, your employees, you have your the title company, you have property management if you do rentals and whatnot, so you have a lot of different types of interactions, and figuring out how you're going to be presenting yourself, how you're going to what's your mental process for each of these interactions. I think it's pretty important, and you have to be flexible enough to kind of like adapt to each of these kind of environments and get what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So So any kind of like, so for these people that are interested in doing, getting into real estate, maybe getting into wholesaling. So so what are some of the other challenges that they might face and that, your coaching programs or a coach would actually help them alleviate?
So I think one of the think of the process. People, the term operating system is out there. Right? What does that even mean? Yeah. Well, it's a way of doing business. It's a way of just a set of actions that take you to a desired outcome, right? The space of wholesaling doesn't really have something that's super structured as an evergreen, right, operating system. If you look at other stuff, I mean, there's specific ways of doing things in different industries, but wholesaling is one of those that hasn't really been it's always been looked at as cycles, right? And and I'm a big believer that hustle is a season. We need that, right? We need to have that attitude of hustle, but it's a season. It's not a business strategy. You can't hustle through deals 24/7 because you're going to get burned out. You got to have a system in place. You have to automate whatever you can, and then delegate the rest to build something that's sustainable. So one of the biggest challenges again is people understand like the pieces of the process of wholesaling, but not necessarily how to build it or how to structure into this machine, right? Yeah. I break it down, and this is I do the exact same thing. So I have an active wholesaling business. We generate anywhere from 15 to 20 deals on a monthly basis, and it's a pretty steady process that we go off of. The consistency is there. So, but I break it down into 6 stages. So the first one is sourcing, right? There's specific things that happen during the sourcing stage. Basically, you're looking for sellers, somebody's raising their hand. How do we go about that, right? How do you source the deals? The next one is pre-qualification. This is where we have deeper conversations. We pre-qualify based on certain elements and whatnot, see if somebody is really a prospect or if it's just a lead that's going to stay there, right? Yeah. From that, we send them over to acquisitions. This is where my acquisitions team takes it from there. They go deeper in terms of that conversation. They start doing creative deal structures if needed. Is it a wholesale deal? Is it a creative financing deal? We're going to do innovation. We're going to flip this thing, and that's where that happens, right? But that's during the acquisitions process. Then from that, we have the dispositions process, where if we're selling the deal, that's where it goes to. We have buyers list and the entire marketing process, and it's a pretty automated system, right? When you plug it all into place. So most companies or most people doing business stop there. Once they sell the deal, they get that settlement statement, they get the check. Like, okay, cool. How do I find the next guy or gal? And they go back, but they don't review. So they're not tracking, they're not measuring. So the one that comes after disposition is always measuring. What are your KPIs looking like? Your key performance indicators? What metrics are you tracking? What's your deal conversion ratio? What's your cost per lead, right? How much do you have to spend to actually get a deal on average? And is that sustainable, right? So we're pretty adamant about tracking and understanding how the whole thing works, because what gets tracked gets improved, right? And then the 6th one is it's an improvement session. So after, every single time we close deals, we have management meetings on a weekly basis, for example, in my company. And it's the same thing that I coach. And we come back and then we review, okay, what happened last week? What did we close? What happened? How are we looking at the KPIs? And we start asking improvement questions. Did we leave money on the table? Was there something that we came across that we hadn't seen before? And if so, we take that and then we plug it into that operating system, right? We improve the operation with each one of the deals. And when you have this methodical way of doing things, a couple of really cool things happen. And one is that when the idea to hire, okay, I need to hire somebody, but I have no idea what they're going to be doing. That kind of goes away, right? Because now if you got to hire somebody for sourcing, or if they're going to be converting, what level of employee are you going to need, and level of skill set. We're all different. Everybody has different skill sets. Now we also have. It's interesting, like when you get deeper into it, right? We have different behavioral strengths that play to each one of those roles. So some people are going to be naturally better suited to be on the dispo, stage. Some people are going to be better suited to be in the acquisitions, and it depends. I mean, that plays into the whole, behavioral profile. But things like that, right? Like when you start implementing and rolling those things into your business and just weaving it and learning to grow your operation that way, that becomes scalable. And it's something that's sustainable, which is ultimately what we're looking for, right? I don't want to go on vacation for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and then feel like my business just fell apart. Like, it's not a business, it's a job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think this is very important. I think, and as you get into the business, you have to think about that. There was a famous book, I think it was an E-Myth. I think it was the Entrepreneur Myth. And I think they described it very well, is that they knew that the business you had somebody that was doing marketing, and you had somebody that was doing sales, somebody that was doing the manufacturing. I think it was a pie business or something that they had that, and you have somebody that was doing the finance and all that kind of stuff. And then as an entrepreneur, of course, at the beginning, you're doing everything.
Right.
But then eventually you're going to say, well, this is, and then kind of think of it as different hats that you're wearing. It's well, now I'm the chef. Now I am the accountant. Now I'm the CEO. Now I'm the marketing expert and all that kind of stuff. And then understanding kind of like the different hats that you're wearing during the business, and then kind of like considering them kind of like as different areas, different system, different departments, and then defining the process for each of these different areas.
I'm glad.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, right? If you're a solo operation, it doesn't mean that you don't have to run organized, right? You don't have to wait until you hire to get organized.
Yes.
If it's honestly like one of the first thoughts that comes to mind when I'm doing something like a new process, a new activity in the business is, okay, cool. How can I set this up so I don't do it again? so I can plug somebody else into it. One of my favorite tools for that is Loom. Loom.com.
We just
Loom.com. So I use that to record every single new process, even when it's rough around the edges. If I don't know, we're pulling comps on a new market and something happens to be a little different. Okay, I'll do a Loom video, which is a screen recording thing, and I'll take that and I'll send it to one of my VAs. They'll re-record it and clean it up and make it all nice and pretty, and then they'll plug it into that operating system, right? So you start building your training database that way. It takes, through a process, simple as that, it's going to take you an extra, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes to click record and then kind of see what happened, and then just think more methodically about your approach and talk over the screen as you're going through the process. But now you can take that, and then you don't have to do it for the next 50 times if you have somebody else to take over. So I do something
similar. I use QuickTime, and then I just provide feedback sometime, and I just record, say, this is how I do it. This is what you need to go here, and you need to go there, and then update it, and then I just put it on a drive somewhere, and I say, this is your training, and then for the next thing, and then they document it into either like an actual document with step by step, or they just leave it like that and say, this is the training document itself.
Yeah, and then you start building your protocols and your standard operating procedures, and then now you have a document that you can go off of, right? So that starts to become something that's delegatable. People go back to it, you update it whenever you need to, but you have a foundation of what the company looks like. And I think it's always overlooked. Especially on solopreneurs, the fact that we can start building like a business. So one of the biggest things that I actually learned from the E-Myth is think about your business as if you were to sell it tomorrow or turn it into a franchise model. Like if I sell, the value may be there, right? But it's all in my head. Nobody's going to pay me for that. And I'm definitely not going to stick around to walk everybody, through the process and handhold, right? But if I get it out of my head into this organized, setup, or take something that's already set up and then replicate it, that has, value to it. So it's important to think, to approach business that way, right? Start getting away from that hustler mentality. And the attitude has to, we're still going to have that hustler attitude, right? Whenever we need it, we break it out and then we just do what we need to. But it's not sustainable. So it's transitioning from that hustle mentality 24/7 to that entrepreneur mindset. The thing that gives us that sense of freedom down the road.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're all after. Well,
Yeah,
Rafael, this
absolutely.
was a great conversation. Thank you very much for joining me. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
Thank you for having me, man. It's been fun. Yeah, no, I mean, if somebody wants to get a hold of me, I'm pretty active on social media.
Yeah.
Where
can they get a hold of you? Yeah.
Instagram, it's Rafael Cortez, CEO, REFAEL Cortez, CEO. If you guys want to download a PDF of the 6 steps that he just talked about in wholesaling, you can go to reiwholesaling.com. Okay. And yeah, get a free download there.
Okay.
So
excellent.
YouTube channel, same thing, Rafael Cortez, CEO. So.
Excellent. Well, Rafael, it was a pleasure, and talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to Break Away from the Rat Race with your host, Eric Martel. If you want to share your story and experience with our listeners, please message us on Facebook at Break Away from the Rat Race. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast on iTunes.